August in the Texas Panhandle ain't fit for man nor beast. 2 in the morning, and Ruth McCullister sat alone on her weathered porch, one hand wrapped around a warm Lone Star beer, the other pressing hard against that goddamn lump on her knee. 3 weeks now, it had been festering there like a mesquite thorn buried deep, but harder, meaner, alive. She pressed her thumb into the swelling. The lump pressed back. Ruth's breath caught. That weren't right. That weren't right at all. Inside the house, the radio played low, Johnny Cash giving way to the midnight news. Vietnam casualty reports. She'd listened to that same broadcast every night for 18 months, ever since Tommy's letters stopped coming. Every night, she half expected to hear his name crackling through the static. Private First Class Thomas Earl McCullister, Amarillo, Texas. The lump pulsed beneath her fingers, like a heartbeat that weren't her own. Jesus Christ, Ruth whispered. Then it split open. Not blood, not pus. Something wrapped in oil-stained cloth pushed through the skin like a birth. Small, hard, impossible. Ruth's hands shook as she peeled back the fabric, her calloused fingers clumsy with shock. A dog tag, military issue, tarnished silver catching the porch light. She held it close, squinting at the stamped letters. SGT. Carlos Gonzalez. The name hit her like a fist. She knew it. Knew it from the Amarillo Daily News casualty lists she read every morning with her coffee, dreading the day she'd see McCullister printed there. Carlos Gonzalez. Died March 67. Quezon. Same battle where Tommy had been stationed. The dog tag was warm in her palm. Warm like it had been hanging around a living man's neck just seconds ago. Outside, something howled. Coyote maybe. Or maybe something that used to be a man. Ruth pressed the metal to her chest, and for the first time since Earl died 3 years back, she spoke out loud to the God she'd stopped believing in. Tommy, baby, what did you send me? The wind carried no answer, just dust and the distant rumble of a summer storm that wouldn't break. Morning came hard and bright, the way it always did on the high plains. Ruth woke on the porch where she dozed off sometime before dawn, the dog tag still clutched in her fist like a talisman. Her neck ached something fierce from sleeping propped against the rail, but that weren't nothing compared to what she felt when she looked down at her knee. Smooth skin, not even a scar. She ran her fingers over the spot where the lump had burst open just hours ago and found nothing, like it never happened, like her body had swallowed the wound whole and forgotten about it. Well, I'll be damned, she muttered. Inside, the coffee pot sat cold on the stove. She went through the motions automatic-like. Pump the water, measure the grounds, light the burner. Routine was what kept you sane when the world stopped making sense. Earl used to say that. Of course, Earl also said hard work and clean living would see a man through anything, and look where that got him, 6 feet under before he turned 55. Heart attack, summer of 64. Dropped dead trying to fix the water pump during the worst heat wave in 20 years. Ruth found him face down in the dirt, wrench still in his hand. 3 years gone now, and she still kept his coffee cup on the shelf. Couldn't bring herself to use it. Couldn't bring herself to pack it away neither. The coffee percolated, filling the kitchen with a smell that was half comfort, half accusation. Ruth pulled the dog tag from her pocket and set it on the worn Formica table. In daylight, it looked even more impossible, military issue, genuine as her own heartbeat. But Carlos Gonzalez had been dead 4 months. His tags shouldn't be coming out of a 52-year-old widow's knee in the middle of the Texas Panhandle. She thought about the nights after Earl died when she'd prayed, really prayed, the kind that tears your throat raw, for God to explain why he'd taken a good man and left her with 200 acres of dust and 30 head of cattle too stubborn to die. No answer came then. No answer came now. But the dog tag sat there real as rain, and somewhere south in San Antonio, Tommy was alive in a VA hospital and nobody'd thought to tell his mama. Ruth poured her coffee and sat hard in the chair. Her hands shook. Alive. Her boy was alive. She'd spent 18 months reading casualty lists like scripture, half dead herself from the waiting. And all that time, Tommy'd been breathing, healing, fighting some different war with army bureaucracy while she aged a decade. The rage came sudden and hot. Rage at the army for losing paperwork. Rage at God for letting her suffer when a simple telegram would have ended it. Rage at herself for not knowing somehow, the way mothers in stories always knew. But under the rage was something else, something dangerous to acknowledge because hope was the cruelest thing you could give yourself when life kept taking. Tommy was alive, and Carlos Gonzalez had somehow sent her proof. Ruth drained her coffee in 3 scalding gulps and stood. She needed to find Maria Gonzalez, needed to understand what Carlos and Tommy had been to each other. What kind of bond could reach beyond death and deliver a message through flesh and blood? But first, she needed to go into town, needed to look Old Man Hargrove in the eye and ask him what he knew about the widow living in that run-down trailer park off Route 66. Outside, Scout, her 15-year-old cattle dog, whined at the door. She let him in, and he pressed his graying muzzle against her leg, right where the lump used to be. The dog sniffed once, twice, then looked up at her with those knowing brown eyes. "Yeah, boy," Ruth said softly. "Something happened, didn't it?" Scout's tail wagged once. That was enough. Ruth grabbed Earl's old Stetson from the hook by the door. She'd been wearing it since he died, and it fit her just fine now, and headed for the truck. The Ford was older than dirt but still ran, which was more than could be said for most things in her life. The drive to town took 20 minutes on good roads and 30 on these rutted dirt tracks. Ruth didn't mind. Gave her time to rehearse what she'd say to Hargrove without sounding like she'd gone soft in the head. "Morning, Harlan. Got a question for you. You know anything about a Mexican widow name of Gonzalez?" Simple. Direct. No mention of dog tags emerging from body parts. The panhandle spread out flat and endless on both sides of the road. This land had killed better folks than her, killed the buffalo, killed the Indians, killed generations of farmers who thought they could tame it. But it was her land now, bought with Earl's sweat and watered with her tears. Pride was a sin, the good book said, but it was also all she had left. Hargrove's General Store sat on Main Street like it had since before the Depression. Weathered clapboard, Coca-Cola sign faded to ghosts of red and white, screen door that announced every customer with a slap and a creak. Ruth parked the Ford out front, ignoring the way Mrs. Henderson across the street pretended not to stare while sweeping her already clean porch. Town had opinions about Ruth McCullister, always had. Woman alone on a ranch, no children, wearing her dead husband's hat and doing work that ought to be left to men. They'd expected her to sell after Earl died, move to Amarillo, get a job at the Woolworths like a proper widow. But Ruth didn't know how to quit, and that made folks uncomfortable. The bell above the door jangled as she stepped inside. Hargrove looked up from his ledger, bifocals sliding down his nose. 75 years old if he was a day, but his eyes were sharp as barbed wire. "Ruthie, ain't seen you in near about 2 weeks." "Been busy." She approached the counter, pulling the dog tag from her pocket. "Got a question for you, Harlan." The old man's face went still when he saw the metal in her palm. He set down his pencil real careful-like, the way you'd handle a snake that might or might not be dead. "Where'd you get that?" "You know whose it is?" "Carlos Gonzalez. Good man. Died at San back in March." Hargrove's voice dropped low. "His widow's still around. Lives in that trailer park off Route 66. Mexican gal. Maria something. Town don't treat her too kindly, if you take my meaning." Ruth's jaw tightened. "Why not?" "You know how folks are. She's collecting his pension, government checks. Some say she's taking money that ought to go to real Americans." He held up a hand before Ruth could spit fire. "I ain't saying I agree, just telling you what's being said." "Where exactly on Route 66? Hargrove studied her face. "What's your interest in this, Ruthie?" "That's between me and her." The old man sighed, pulled out a scrap of paper, and drew a rough map. "Sunset Trailer Park. Can't miss it, only one out that way. Space number 12, I believe. But Ruth—" He hesitated. "Be careful. Deputy Tucker's been watching that place. Oil companies got him on payroll, looking for excuses to clear out undesirables before they start surveying for drilling rights." Ruth's blood went cold. "They're surveying my land?" "Your land, mine. Half the ranches in this county. Found shale oil under the panhandle." Big money. Hargrove's expression turned grim. They're real interested in properties with complications. Owners they can pressure, widows, folks without family to fight back. The dog tag felt heavier in Ruth's palm. She tucked it back in her pocket. Thanks, Harlan. Ruthie, his voice stopped her at the door. Whatever you're fixing to do, think hard on it. Tucker's mean when he wants to be, and them oil company boys are meaner. Don't give them ammunition. She pushed through the screen door without answering. The Sunset Trailer Park was a collection of rust and broken dreams 12 miles outside town. Ruth counted 14 trailers in various states of decay, most with laundry hanging limp in the heat and children's toys scattered in the dirt. Number 12 sat at the far end, smallest of the lot, patched with duct tape and prayers, one window covered with cardboard. Ruth sat in her truck for a full minute, engine ticking as it cooled, trying to figure out what the hell she was going to say. A dead man's dog tag came out of my knee didn't seem like the kind of opener that inspired trust. Finally, she climbed out, knocked 3 times on the dented aluminum door. Silence. Then footsteps. The door cracked open 2 inches, security chains still fastened. A woman's face appeared in the gap. Dark eyes, suspicious, worn thin by worry. Mrs. Gonzalez? Who's asking? Name's Ruth McCullister. I got something belongs to you. She pulled out the dog tag, held it where Maria could see. The effect was immediate. Maria's face went white as chalk, her hand flew to her mouth, and for a second Ruth thought she might faint. The door slammed shut, but only to unhook the chain. Then it swung open wide. Donde? Where did you get that? Maria's English was accented but clear, each word precise. That's the thing I can't rightly explain. Ruth swallowed hard. It came out of my knee. I know that sounds crazy as a shithouse rat, but come inside. Maria grabbed her wrist, pulled her into the trailer's dim interior. Rapido, before someone sees. The trailer's interior was cramped but spotless. Everything in its place, dishes drying in a rack, a small votive candle burning beneath a picture of Jesus. But what stopped Ruth cold was the boy. He sat at a fold-down table covered with drawings, maybe 8 years old, skinny as a fence post. He didn't look up when Ruth entered, just kept moving a crayon across paper in slow, deliberate strokes. The image taking shape was violent. Explosions, helicopters, stick figures falling. Miguel, Maria said softly. Tenemos visita. The boy's hands stilled. He glanced up once, dark eyes too old for his face, then went back to drawing. He don't talk, Maria said, voice catching. Not since they told us about Carlos. Ruth's throat tightened. She knew that kind of silence, the kind that swallowed you whole. Maria gestured to the dog tag still in Ruth's hand. Please, tell me. So Ruth did. Told her about the lump, the pain, the way it burst open at 2 in the morning. Told her about finding the tag warm as body heat, about her knee healing without a trace. The whole time she expected Maria to call her crazy, to throw her out. Instead, Maria crossed herself and sank into a chair. Carlos told me, she whispered. Before his last deployment, he said if something happened, he would find a way. I didn't believe him. I thought it was just, how do you say, soldier talk. Making promises to make the goodbye easier. What kind of promise? Maria's eyes glistened. He and his friend made a pact. Blood brothers, they called it. If one died, he would watch over the other's family. She looked up at Ruth. Your son, Thomas McCullister. That was Carlos's friend. Ruth's knees went weak. She grabbed the counter to steady herself. Tommy and Carlos were best friends. Carlos wrote about him in every letter, said Tommy saved his life twice, said he was the only white boy who treated him like a man, not like… Maria's voice hardened. Not like what people here treat us. Miguel suddenly pushed away from the table and walked to Ruth. No hesitation, no fear. He reached out and touched her knee, the exact spot where the lump had been. The effect was instant. Ruth gasped as warmth flooded through her leg, up her spine, settling in her chest like sunlight. The boy's eyes rolled back, just for a second, and when they focused again, they weren't entirely his own. Mr. Tommy says thank you. The voice was Miguel's, but the cadence was wrong. Older. Says he's sorry he couldn't come home sooner. Says the desert tried to keep him, but the promise was stronger. Maria made a sound between a sob and a prayer. Miguel turned to his mother. Daddy says he's proud of you, Mama. Says stop crying at night. He can hear you, and it hurts him. Then the boy blinked, swayed, and collapsed. Both women lunged, but Ruth got there first, catching him before he hit the floor. He was light as a sack of chicken feed, all bones and not enough meat. Miguel! Maria grabbed her son, cradling him. Mijo, wake up! The boy's eyes fluttered open. He looked confused, like he'd just woken from a deep sleep. Mama? I'm here, baby. I'm here. Ruth sat back on her heels, heart hammering. What the hell just happened? Maria rocked Miguel, stroking his hair. Carlos had a gift. Could feel things others couldn't. Knew when men in his unit would die before it happened. The elders in his family, they said he was touched by the spirits. She looked at Ruth, tears streaming. I think Miguel has it too. Spirits. Ruth's voice came out flat. You're telling me your boy talks to ghosts. I'm telling you, my husband is dead, but somehow his dog tag came out of your body. I'm telling you my son hasn't spoken in 18 months, and he just told you things he couldn't possibly know. Maria's chin lifted, defensive. You believe that, but you don't believe in spirits? Ruth had no answer for that. Miguel stirred, pushed himself upright. Miss Ruth? His voice was small, uncertain. Did I do it again? Yeah, honey, you did. I'm sorry. Mama says it scares people. Ruth reached out, surprising herself, and ruffled his hair. I ain't scared, just confused as a goat on AstroTurf. The corner of Miguel's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Outside, a truck engine rumbled past, slowing. Maria's face went tight with fear. They come by every few days, checking, waiting for an excuse. Ruth stood, decision crystallizing. Pack your things. 'Kay? Pack your things. You're coming with me. Both of you. Senora, we cannot. Yes, you can. Ruth's voice left no room for argument. My boy's alive because of your husband. That means something. That means everything. You're not staying in this tin can waiting for them to run you out. She looked around the cramped space. How much of this stuff you really need? Maria's eyes filled again. You don't understand. People will talk. They already hate us. If we come to your ranch, let 'em talk. Ruth met her gaze steady. I've been alone 3 years. Figure it's about time I had some company worth keeping. They loaded Maria's life into the bed of Ruth's Ford in under an hour. Wasn't much to pack. Clothes, Miguel's drawings, a box of photographs, Carlos's uniform folded in tissue paper like a flag. The rest was just furniture that came with the rental, none of it worth saving. Ruth tied down the load with bungee cords while Maria swept the trailer one last time, some instinct about leaving a place clean even when it never did you any favors. Miguel sat in the truck cab, clutching a worn teddy bear missing one eye, staring out the windshield at nothing. Ready? Ruth asked when Maria emerged, locking the door out of habit even though she'd never be back. See? Yes, I think so. They were pulling onto Route 66 when Ruth saw the dust trail behind them. A truck, moving fast, closing the distance. Her hands tightened on the wheel. Company, she muttered. Maria twisted in her seat, face going pale. Deputy Tucker. Sure enough, the sheriff's cruiser pulled alongside, lights flashing. Ruth considered flooring it. The Ford had some pep left in her, but that'd just make things worse. She eased onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires. Tucker took his time getting out, adjusting his hat, making them wait. He was mid-40s, lean as jerky, with a face that might have been handsome before bitterness carved lines around his mouth. Ruth knew his story. Everyone did. Son killed in Vietnam, spring of '66. Danny Tucker, 19 years old, 3 weeks from coming home. Afternoon, Ruthie. He tipped his hat, eyes sliding past her to Maria. Ma'am. Wade, something wrong? Depends. Where you heading with Mrs. Gonzalez and the boy? My ranch. Invited them to stay a spell. Tucker's jaw worked like he was chewing tobacco, though his mouth was empty. That's so? Funny thing, I got a call from the trailer park manager. Says Mrs. Gonzalez broke her lease, left without notice. Didn't break nothing, Maria said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Month-to-month rental. I paid through August. Still. Tucker leaned against Ruth's door, too close, invading space. Folks might wonder why the sudden move, might think she's running from something, might think you're helping her run. Ruth met his stare without blinking. Only thing she's running from is that death trap trailer and neighbors who spray paint threats on her door. You investigate that yet, Wade? Something flickered across his face. Shame, maybe, or anger that she'd called him out. I got a lot on my plate, Ruthie. Can't be everywhere at once. Funny how your plate's empty when it comes to protecting folks, but real full when it comes to hassling them. Tucker's hand dropped to his belt, fingers drumming near his holster. Not a threat, exactly, just a reminder of who wore the badge. You're making enemies, bringing Mexicans to your ranch, after everything that's been said about the oil company's interest in your land. Some folks might call that unwise. Some folks can kiss my ass. Ruthie, we done here, Wade. He pushed off from the truck, stepping back. Yeah, we're done, for now. He looked past her to Maria again. Ma'am, you got any trouble out at the McCullister place? You let me know. We take care of our own around here. The implication was clear. You're not our own. Ruth threw the truck in gear and pulled back onto the highway, not trusting herself to say another word. In the rear view, Tucker stood in the road, watching them disappear. He will make trouble, Maria said quietly. Let him try. Back at the ranch, Ruth showed them inside, the house suddenly feeling smaller with 3 people and a dog instead of just her and Scout. Maria stood in the middle of the front room, taking it in. The worn furniture, the layer of dust on everything, Earl's coffee cup still on the shelf, his boots by the door. Is not much, Ruth said, suddenly self-conscious. But it's clean, mostly, and there's a spare bedroom, used to be for, well, it's yours now, you and Miguel. Maria's eyes welled up. Senora Ruth, I don't know how to thank. Don't thank me yet. Town's gonna have opinions. Deputy Tucker's just the start. Ruth set Maria's box on the table. But you're safe here. That's what matters. Miguel had wandered to the window, looking out at the barn, the cattle in the distance, the endless stretch of prairie. He pressed his palm against the glass. Mama, he said softly, this place feels different. Different how, mijo? The boy turned, and his eyes had that faraway look again. Protected. Like there's... He struggled for words. Like there's soldiers standing guard. Can't see them, but they're here. Ruth's skin prickled. She thought about the dog tag, about Carlos's promise, about Tommy somewhere in San Antonio fighting his own battles. Maybe there are, she said. That night, after Maria put Miguel to bed and excused herself to unpack, Ruth sat on the porch with a beer and Scout at her feet. The sky was clear enough to see the Milky Way, stars so thick they looked like spilled salt. She pulled out the dog tag, running her thumb over Carlos's name. I don't know what you started, she whispered, but I'm seeing it through. Your boy and your wife, they're mine now, you hear me? Mine to protect. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of sage and distant rain. Somewhere out in the dark, a coyote howled. And maybe, just maybe, another voice howled back. Ruth didn't sleep that first night. She sat on the porch with the shotgun across her lap, watching shadows move across the prairie, trying to tell the difference between cattle and men with bad intentions. Scout kept vigil beside her, ears pricked at every sound, hackles rising and falling like a barometer of danger. Nothing came, but the waiting was its own kind of violence. Morning brought heat that shimmered off the hardpan like a living thing. Ruth was frying eggs and salt pork when Maria emerged from the spare bedroom, hair braided neat, eyes red from crying she thought nobody heard. Buenos dias, Maria said softly. Morning, coffee's on. They ate in careful silence, the kind between women who've known loss but don't yet know each other. Miguel picked at his food, drawing invisible patterns on the table with his finger. He does that when spirits are close, Maria said. tracing what they show him. Ruth watched the boy's finger move. Letters, maybe, or numbers. What's he seeing? I don't know. He doesn't always remember after. The sound of an engine cut through the morning quiet. Ruth was on her feet before the truck came into view, shotgun in hand. But it was just Hargrove's old Chevy, rattling up the drive like a bag of bones. The old man climbed out slow, favoring his bad hip. Ruthie, brought supplies. Figured you might need to lay low a few days. Harlan, you didn't have to. Yeah, I did. He hauled a box from the truck bed. Flour, beans, coffee, some canned goods. Put it on your tab, but don't you worry about paying just yet. His eyes shifted to Maria standing in the doorway. Ma'am. Senor. Maria nodded. Hargrove set the box on the porch, lowering his voice. Ruth, there's talk. Oil company's been asking questions. Who visits you, how often, whether you're of sound mind. He pulled a folded newspaper from his back pocket. And this ran this morning. Ruth unfolded the Amarillo Daily News. Page 3, small article. Local rancher under psychiatric evaluation. Following bizarre claims, her stomach turned to lead. They didn't use your name, Hargrove said, but everybody knows. The article was vague, mentioned a widow making claims about supernatural healing, harboring undocumented persons, exhibiting signs of mental instability, all lies wrapped in just enough truth to sound credible. Sons of bitches, Ruth breathed. Gets worse. They've petitioned for a court-ordered evaluation. Judge Morrison's office called me, wanted to know if I'd witnessed any erratic behavior. Hargrove's jaw tightened. Told them you're sound as a dollar, but they're building a case, Ruthie. Trying to prove you're unfit to manage your property. Maria made a small sound of distress. This is because of us. Senora Ruth, we should leave. You're not leaving. Ruth's voice came out harder than she intended. That's exactly what they want. Divide us, make me look unstable, then swoop in and take the land. She looked at Hargrove. How much time we got? Week, maybe 2. Judge Morrison's fair, but if they get enough people saying you've lost your grip. He trailed off, the implications clear. After Hargrove left, Ruth paced the kitchen like a caged animal. Maria watched her, hands folded in her lap, back straight with the dignity of someone who'd weathered storms before. In Mexico, Maria said quietly, the government took my family's land when I was a girl, said it was for the good of the people, gave us nothing. My father died fighting them in court. She met Ruth's eyes. I know what you're up against. I know how it ends. Not this time. Senora. Ruth. Just Ruth. Maria's lips pressed together. Ruth, these men have power, money, the law on their side. What do we have? The truth. The truth? Maria's laugh was bitter. The truth is a Mexican widow and her strange son are living with a woman who claims dog tags came out of her body. You think the truth helps us? Ruth started to argue, then stopped, because Maria was right. The truth sounded insane. Miguel appeared in the doorway, that faraway look in his eyes. The man with the papers is coming. Today, he's bringing others. What man, mijo? Maria's voice sharpened with worry. The doctor. The one who's sad about his daughter. Miguel tilted his head, listening to something only he could hear. He doesn't want to come, but they're making him. Ruth's blood chilled. Dr. Morrison, the psychiatrist who'd called Hargrove. When? She asked. Miguel's eyes focused on her, ancient and knowing in his young face. Soon, before the sun is highest. And Ruth? His voice dropped. They're not coming to talk. They're coming to take you. Outside, dust rose on the horizon. 3 vehicles moving fast. Scouts started barking. Maria grabbed Miguel, pulling him close. Dios mío, what do we do? Ruth picked up the shotgun, checked the shells, her hands steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. We stand our ground, and we make them work for every inch. The engines grew louder. Closer. The siege was beginning. 3 vehicles pulled into Ruth's yard, kicking up dust that hung in the air like smoke. A sheriff's cruiser, not Tucker's, someone new, a sedan with government plates, and a black Lincoln Continental that screamed money and lawyers. Ruth stood on her porch, shotgun visible, but not aimed. Maria had Miguel inside with orders to stay away from windows. Scout positioned himself at Ruth's feet, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The sedan door opened first. Doctor Morrison emerged, 50-something, wire-rimmed glasses, carrying a leather briefcase like a shield. He looked sick, pale, sweating despite the morning cool. "Mrs. McCullister," he called out, "I'm Dr. Harold Morrison. We spoke on the phone. I'm here pursuant to a court order for psychiatric evaluation." "I know who you are," Ruth's voice carried across the yard. "And I know you don't want to be here." Morrison flinched. Behind him, two men in suits climbed out of the Lincoln Oil Company. Had to be. And from the cruiser came a deputy Ruth didn't recognize. Young, maybe 30, hand resting on his sidearm. "I'm Deputy Barnes," the young man said. "Ma'am, we need you to cooperate. This can go easy or hard." "There's a third option," Ruth said. "You can get back in your vehicles and leave my property." One of the suits stepped forward, tall, silver-haired, smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. McCullister, I'm Richard Thatcher representing Lone Star Petroleum. We're not here to cause trouble. Dr. Morrison just needs to ask a few questions. Standard procedure for land transfers." "Ain't no land transfer happening." "In cases where mental competency is in question." Thatcher's smile widened. "Surely you understand. A woman living alone, making bizarre claims about supernatural occurrences, harboring illegal immigrants. The court has a duty to ensure you're capable of managing your affairs." "Illegal?" Maria's voice rang out from inside. She appeared in the doorway, Miguel clutching her hand. "I am citizen. My husband died for this country. You have no right." "Mrs. Gonzalez." Thatcher's tone dripped false sympathy. "No one's questioning your citizenship, but your presence here, combined with Mrs. McCullister's episode, raises concerns about her judgment." Ruth's finger moved to the shotgun's trigger guard. "Not quite a threat. Not quite not a threat." "Dr. Morrison," she called. "You got something to say to me. Say it." "But these vultures can wait in their cars." Morrison stepped forward, alone, hands visible. When he got close enough that the others couldn't hear, his voice dropped to a whisper. "Mrs. McCullister, I don't want to be here. What your boy said about my daughter." His voice cracked. "Nobody knew about Sarah. Nobody. It was 5 years ago, different state, sealed records." His eyes were haunted. "How did he know?" "You tell me, doctor. You're the expert on what's real and what ain't." "I don't. I can't." He pulled papers from his briefcase with shaking hands. "They want me to declare you incompetent. Sign these papers saying you're experiencing delusions, paranoid episodes, unable to manage your property." He looked back at the waiting men. "If I don't, they've threatened to open an investigation into Sarah's death. Claim I was negligent, that I'm covering up medical malpractice." Ruth's gut twisted. "So they got you by the throat, too." "I'm sorry." "I'm so goddamn sorry." Morrison's hands were shaking so bad the papers rustled. "But if there's any way you can if you'd consider selling, taking their offer, this all goes away." The sound of another engine cut him off. A battered pickup truck came tearing up the drive, and Ruth's heart lurched when she saw who climbed out. Reverend Billy Hayes. Drunk at 10 in the morning, stumbling, but carrying a box that he clutched like it held the crown jewels. "Wait," he shouted. "Everybody just wait a damn minute." Deputy Barnes moved to intercept him. "Sir, you need to leave." "Like hell I do." Hayes shoved past him with surprising strength. He lurched up to Thatcher, thrust the box at him. "Go on. Open it. Tell everyone what's inside." Thatcher's face went carefully blank. "Reverend, you're clearly intoxicated. I'm drunk as a skunk and clear-headed for the first time in months." Hayes laughed, bitter and broken. "Ledgers, financial records. Bribes, payoffs, illegal land seizures going back 3 years. I stole them from your office last night." He turned to Ruth. "They tried to buy me, offered to bring my boy home from Canada if I testified against you, said they'd get him immunity for draft dodging." The air went electric. "That's theft," Thatcher said quietly. "And slander. You'll be arrested. Arrest me then. Hayes spread his arms wide. I'm done being scared, done being a coward. My son ran to Canada because he knew this war was about money, not freedom. And I called him a traitor. Tears streaked his face. But he was right. It's all money. Everything. And I won't help you steal from a widow to get more of it. Morrison's head snapped up. Did you say draft dodging immunity? They offered you that? Dangled it like a carrot. Said they had connections in Washington. Something shifted in Morrison's expression. The fear drained away, replaced by cold fury. He turned to Thatcher. You told me you were just petroleum executives. You said this was routine land acquisition. It is. Bullshit. Morrison ripped the evaluation papers in half. You've been blackmailing me. Blackmailing him. How many others? He looked at Ruth. Mrs. McCullister, I'm not signing anything. In fact, I'm calling the state medical board and reporting this entire operation. Thatcher's mask finally slipped. You're making a mistake. All of you. No, Ruth said, raising the shotgun just enough. You made the mistake. Coming to my land, threatening my people, thinking we'd break. Deputy Barnes's hand moved to his gun. Ma'am, put down the weapon. A new voice cut through the tension, young, firm, carrying the weight of authority. I'd advise everyone to stay calm. They all turned. A military jeep sat at the property line, and climbing out was a man in Army captain's uniform, accompanied by two MPs. Captain James Miller, Army CID. I'm here about Sergeant Carlos Gonzalez and the Quezon incident. His eyes swept the assembled group. And it seems I've arrived just in time. Captain Miller walked forward with the confidence of a man who'd seen worse standoffs in rice paddies and jungle clearings. His uniform was crisp, despite the dust. His face weathered beyond his years. Couldn't be more than 40, but his eyes belonged to someone older. Captain. Thatcher recovered first, smoothing his suit. I'm not sure what army business brings you here, but this is a civilian matter. That's where you're wrong, Mr. Thatcher. Miller pulled a folder from under his arm. Sergeant Carlos Gonzalez was killed in action March 12, 1967, during the Battle of Quezon. His after-action report was filed improperly, his commendations buried, and his next of kin received minimal death benefits. He looked past the oilmen to where Maria stood frozen in the doorway. Mrs. Gonzalez, I presume? Maria nodded, unable to speak. Ma'am, your husband saved 14 men the day he died, including Private First Class Thomas McCullister. Miller's voice softened. He should have received the Medal of Honor. Instead, his file was marked routine casualty and forgotten. Ruth's world tilted. Tommy? You know about Tommy? Yes, ma'am. He's been fighting Army bureaucracy for 18 months trying to get recognition for Sergeant Gonzalez. That's why you haven't heard from him. He wasn't allowed to write home while under investigation for insubordination. Miller pulled out another paper. This telegram arrived at Fort Sam Houston this morning. I took the liberty of bringing it myself. He handed it to Ruth. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. Coming home. Stop arriving. Amarillo Station, August 23. Stop bringing friend. Stop. Love. Tommy. Stop. The date hit Ruth like a fist. August 23rd. Today. Right now. He's coming home, she whispered. My boy's coming home. Maria made a sound, half sob, half prayer. August 23rd. That's Carlos's birthday. The moment hung suspended, sacred. Then Thatcher's voice shattered it. This is all very touching, but it doesn't change the matter at hand. Mrs. McCullister is still subject to psychiatric evaluation. No. Dr. Morrison stepped away from the oil company men, moving to stand beside Ruth. I'm withdrawing my evaluation. There's nothing wrong with this woman except she's surrounded by vultures. Deputy Barnes shifted, uncomfortable. Doc, the court order can be challenged, and I'll testify that this entire proceeding is fraudulent. Morrison looked at Thatcher. You threatened me, blackmailed me. That makes everything here inadmissible. Reverend Hayes swayed, still clutching his box of stolen ledgers. And I got proof they've been doing this all over the county, targeting widows, sick folks, anyone who can't fight back. He looked at Ruth. I'm sorry I almost helped them. Sorry I was weak. You're here now, Ruth said. That's what counts. Thatcher's face had gone red. You're all making a grave mistake. Lone Star Petroleum has legal rights to survey this land. Show me the paperwork, Miller interrupted. I don't have to show you anything. You're Army, not law enforcement. I'm Criminal Investigation Division, and I'm very interested in how a petroleum company knows intimate details about a classified military investigation. Miller's eyes narrowed. How did you know Mrs. McCullister's son was at Khe Sanh? That information hasn't been made public. Silence. Thatcher's mouth opened and closed. Someone's been feeding you intelligence, Miller continued. Military intelligence. That's a federal crime. Deputy Barnes took a step back from the oil company men, hand moving away from his sidearm. Captain, I wasn't aware of any of this. I was just told to assist with a court-ordered evaluation. Then I suggest you assist with something else, Deputy. Like taking statements from everyone here about attempted extortion and fraud. Inside the house, Miguel suddenly cried out. Maria rushed to him, and Ruth heard the boy's voice, strange and layered. They're here. The soldiers are here. Tommy and his friend. At the station now. But danger's coming too. Ruth's blood ran cold. The station. Captain, how far is Amarillo Station from here? 30 minutes. Why? She looked at Maria, saw the same fear reflected in her eyes. If the oil company knew about Tommy, knew he was coming home today, they're gonna try something, Ruth said. At the station, they'll arrest him or claim he's dangerous, PTSD, violent vet, and use him as leverage against me. Thatcher's silence was confirmation enough. Son of a bitch, Miller breathed. He turned to his MPs. Radio ahead. I want security at that station now. Nobody approaches Private McCullister except military personnel. Captain, wait. Thatcher's composure finally cracked. We can make a deal. Name your price. Mrs. McCullister will triple our offer. You can take the money, reunite with your son somewhere else. Get off my land. Ruth's voice was quiet, deadly. Right now. Before I forget, I'm a Christian woman. Thatcher looked at Deputy Barnes, at Morrison, at Hayes, looking for an ally and finding none. His partner was already backing toward the Lincoln. This isn't over, Thatcher said. Yeah, it is. Ruth raised the shotgun. You got till the count of 5. 1. They scrambled for their vehicles. 2. Engines roared to life. 3. The Lincoln spun out, kicking up gravel. Deputy Barnes hesitated, then approached Ruth. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. He was young, scared, ashamed. What do you want me to do? Ruth lowered the shotgun. Follow Captain Miller to the station. Make sure my boy gets home safe. Then maybe we'll talk about what kind of deputy this county needs. Barnes nodded and ran for his cruiser. As the vehicles disappeared down the drive, Ruth's legs finally gave out. She sat hard on the porch steps, adrenaline draining away, leaving her hollow. Maria emerged with Miguel, the boy's eyes clear now. He's safe, Ruth. I saw him. Tommy's safe. They're both safe. Both? Miguel smiled. Tommy and Jerome, the friend he's bringing home, they protected each other in the war. Now they'll help protect us. Reverend Hayes sank down beside Ruth, box of ledgers in his lap. Hell of a morning. Hell of a life, Ruth muttered. Captain Miller approached, radio crackling on his hip. My men are at the station. Your son's train arrives in 20 minutes. Mrs. McCullister, would you like an escort? Ruth looked at Maria, at Miguel, at the Reverend, at Dr. Morrison still standing awkwardly in her yard. Yeah, she said, pushing to her feet. Yeah, I would. All of us. She looked at the assembled group, this strange collection of broken people who'd somehow found the spine to stand. Let's go bring our boys home. Amarillo Station hadn't changed since Ruth was a girl. Same red brick, same wooden benches worn smooth by decades of waiting, same clock tower that ran 5 minutes slow. But today, it felt different. Electric, like the air before a lightning strike. Captain Miller's Jeep led the convoy, Ruth's Ford behind it, then Morrison's sedan, Hayes riding with Barnes in the cruiser. They pulled up as the train's whistle echoed across the plains, long and mournful. Ruth climbed out, legs shaky. Maria was beside her in an instant, Miguel between them. The platform was crowded, other families waiting, some holding welcome signs, some just hoping. There, Miguel pointed. The train hissed to a stop, brakes squealing, doors opened. People poured out, salesmen with sample cases, women in traveling clothes, an old couple moving slow. Then she saw him. Tommy stepped onto the platform on crutches, his right leg ending just below the knee. He was thinner than she remembered, face carved leaner, but his eyes, Earl's eyes, found her immediately. Mama. Ruth couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 18 months of fear and grief and rage collapsed into that single moment. Then her legs were carrying her forward, and she was crushing him against her chest, crutches clattering to the platform. My boy, she sobbed into his shoulder. My boy, my boy, my boy. I'm here, Mama. I'm home. Behind Tommy, another soldier appeared. Tall, black, also on crutches, missing his left arm below the elbow. His eyes scanned the platform warily, the look of a man who'd learned not to trust crowds. Mama, Tommy pulled back, wiping his eyes. This is Jerome, Jerome Washington. He's the reason I'm standing here. Jerome nodded, uncertain. Ma'am. Ruth grabbed his hand, pulled him into the embrace. Then your family. You hear me? Family. Maria stepped forward, Miguel clutching her dress. Tommy saw her and went still. Mrs. Gonzalez, he whispered. See. Yes. Maria's voice broke. You were with Carlos. You were there. I was there. Tommy's face crumpled. Ma'am, he died in my arms. I tried, God, I tried to stop the bleeding, but there was so much. He was crying now, ugly and hard. I'm so sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry. Maria reached up, cupped his face in her hands. Mijo, listen to me. You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. Carlos loved you like a brother. He wrote about you in every letter, said you were the best man he knew. He saved us, Jerome added quietly. 14 of us pinned down. Charlie had us dead to rights. Carlos charged their position alone, drew fire so we could move. Most insane, bravest thing I ever saw. Captain Miller stepped forward, pulling an official-looking box from his pack. He opened it to reveal a medal, bronze star suspended from blue ribbon, encased in velvet. Mrs. Gonzalez, it is my honor to posthumously award Sergeant Carlos Gonzalez the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Miller's voice carried across the platform. People had stopped to watch. Your husband was a hero. The Army failed to recognize that. We're correcting that failure today. Maria took the box with trembling hands. She stared at the medal, at Carlos's name engraved on the citation, and then she broke. 18 months of holding it together shattered. Ruth caught her as she fell to her knees, keening with a grief that had no words. Miguel knelt beside his mother, small hand on her back. Mama, don't cry. Daddy's here. He's so proud. He says. The boy's eyes rolled back. When he spoke again, the voice was wrong, older, deeper, Spanish accented. Mi amor, no llores más. I am free. I am at peace. Our boy will be strong. And Tommy is mi hermano. He will watch over you, as I watch over all of you. The platform had gone silent. Even the skeptics felt something shift in the air, like a presence, warm and protective, settling over them. Miguel blinked, came back to himself. He looked at Tommy. Mr. Tommy, Daddy says thank you for keeping your promise. He says the blood pact is complete now. You brought him home. Tommy stared at the boy, then at Ruth. Mama, how does he? Long story, Ruth said. But first, she turned to Captain Miller. Is my boy free to go? No charges? No investigations? He's free, honorably discharged with full benefits. Miller extended his hand to Tommy. You did the right thing, Private. Fighting for Sergeant Gonzalez's recognition. Not many men would have risked their career for that. He would have done it for me. A commotion at the platform's edge drew everyone's attention. Deputy Tucker stood there, out of uniform, civilian clothes, looking older than his years. He held his badge in one hand. "Tommy," he said hoarsely, "welcome home, son." Tommy went rigid. "Deputy Tucker." "Not deputy anymore. Quit this morning." Tucker approached slowly, like approaching a spooked horse. "Your mama probably told you about Danny, my boy." "Yes, sir. I heard. I'm sorry." "Don't." Tucker's voice cracked. "Don't apologize. Danny died doing what he thought was right. Just like Carlos. Just like too many others." He held out the badge. "I was wrong. About a lot of things. About your mama. About Mrs. Gonzalez. About what this war cost us." He turned to Maria. "Ma'am, I failed you. Failed to protect you when that was my job. I let my grief make me mean. I'm sorry." Maria studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Apology accepted, senor. We all grieve differently." Tucker looked at Miguel. "Son, you said something to me at the church about Danny forgiving me. Did you really hear that from him?" Miguel nodded solemnly. "He says you were a good daddy. He says stop punishing yourself. The war was wrong, but loving him wasn't." Tucker's knees buckled. Jerome caught him, one-armed, steady, and held the broken man while he wept. Ruth looked around at the assembled group on the platform, her son, home and wounded, Maria clutching her husband's medal, Miguel translating messages from the dead, Tucker finally releasing years of rage, Jerome holding a stranger with the same gentleness he'd shown in combat, Captain Miller bearing witness to it all. "Let's go home," she said. "All of us, let's go home." 3 months later, November 1967, the ranch didn't look like the same place. Fresh paint on the house, white with green trim, Maria's choice. The fence stood straight and solid, mended by Tommy and Jerome working side by side despite missing limbs between them. The barn had a new roof, courtesy of Hargrove, and a dozen townsmen who'd shown up one Saturday with hammers and conscience. Ruth stood at the stove frying chicken for Thanksgiving dinner, the kitchen thick with the smell of sage and cornbread. Through the window she could see Tommy teaching Miguel to rope fence posts, the boy laughing when the lasso fell short. Jerome was in the new bunkhouse, addition they'd built in September, organizing supplies for the veterans group they'd started. "More potatoes, Ruth?" Maria appeared with a basket, her belly just starting to show. She'd married quiet Walter Peterson from the hardware store last month. Quick courtship, but genuine. The man had lost his wife to cancer 2 years back and understood grief's timeline didn't follow rules. "That should do it. Lord knows we got enough food to feed Sherman's army." The table had been extended with sawhorses and plywood, covered in Earl's mother's tablecloth that Ruth hadn't used in years. Chairs borrowed from the church lined both sides. They were expecting 20 for dinner, family and strays who needed somewhere to belong. Deputy Barnes arrived first, no longer a deputy. He'd quit the force after testifying against the oil company executives, now worked at Hargrove's store, and was taking night classes in Amarillo. He brought his mother, a widow herself, who immediately began helping in the kitchen. Reverend Hayes came sober, 6 weeks clean, carrying pumpkin pies his sister had baked. His son had written from Canada, not coming home yet, but the letters were a start. Dr. Morrison arrived with his wife, a quiet woman who squeezed Ruth's hand and said nothing, which was exactly right. Tucker showed up last, carrying a bottle of apple cider and looking uncomfortable. He'd been attending the veterans group meetings, sitting in the back, mostly listening. Tommy had invited him today, despite Ruth's reservations. "Wade," she said at the door. "Ruthie, thanks for having me. I know it ain't easy. Nothing worth doing is easy." They gathered around the table, packed in tight, passing bowls of mashed potatoes and green beans and cornbread, dripping with butter. Miguel sat between Tommy and Jerome, chattering about a horse he wanted to train. Maria's hand rested on her belly, that secret smile of early pregnancy on her face. Ruth stood to say grace. The table quieted. "Lord, we thank you for bringing us through the fire, for teaching us that family ain't just blood, it's who stays when the world tells them to run." Her voice caught. "For Earl, who built this place with his hands. For Carlos, who died protecting men he called brothers. For Danny Tucker and all the boys who can't sit at this table. They ain't forgotten." Tucker's head bowed, shoulders shaking. for second chances, for Miguel's gift that reminds us there's more to this life than what we can see, for Tommy and Jerome coming home different but whole in the ways that matter, for Maria and the new life she's carrying, for every person here who chose hard over easy, truth over comfort. She looked around the table at these broken people who'd become whole together, for healing, for home, for hope. Amen. Amen, they echoed. The meal passed in laughter and stories. Jerome told about the time Carlos convinced their CO that armadillos were Viet Cong scouts. Tommy demonstrated his new prosthetics knee joint, proud as a kid with a new bicycle. Miguel showed everyone his latest drawings. No more explosions, just horses and houses and people holding hands. After dinner, Miguel approached Ruth with a folded paper. For you. She opened it carefully. The drawing showed the ranch years from now. The house bigger, children playing in the yard, gardens blooming. At the edge of the property stood shadowy figures with wings, guardians. You see this? Ruth asked. Daddy showed me, and Mr. Earl. They say this place will heal people for a long, long time. Soldiers who come back broken. They'll find family here. Ruth looked at Tommy and Jerome in the doorway, at Maria helping clear dishes, at Tucker awkwardly stacking plates like he was learning how to be useful again. Reckon they already are, she said. That evening, after everyone left, Ruth stood on the porch watching the sun set over the panhandle. The dog tag hung by the door now, shrine with Earl's hat, Carlos's Medal of Honor, Tommy's Purple Heart, and a photo of Danny Tucker that Wade had brought. Guardians, all of them. Tommy called from the barn. Mama, Jerome needs your opinion on the bunkhouse expansion. Ruth smiled, the first truly easy smile in 3 years. She touched each item in the shrine, metal, fabric, paper, memory. You can rest now, she whispered. We got it from here. The wind carried her words across the prairie, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. This time, it sounded like a blessing. Now, I know some of you listening might think this story stretched the truth some. Dog tags coming out of knees, boys who talk to the dead, miracles on a dusty Texas ranch. And maybe you're right to wonder. But here's what I know is true. There's men listening right now who came home from Vietnam different. Korea, World War II, Iraq, Afghanistan. Came back with pieces of yourselves left in mud and sand and rice paddies. Men who feel like nobody understands the weight you carry. Ruth McCullister was just trying to survive, trying to keep going when everything said quit. And somehow, through grief and stubbornness and maybe a little bit of grace, she found family in the last place she expected. That's the real miracle, ain't it? Not supernatural healing, but humans deciding to show up for each other when it would be easier to walk away. Maria could have stayed bitter about Carlos dying for a country that didn't fully accept him. Tucker could have drowned in whiskey and rage over losing Danny. Ruth could have sold that land and lived her last years comfortable and alone. But they chose different. They chose hard. They chose together. If you're sitting there tonight feeling alone, maybe you lost your wife of 40 years, maybe your kids don't call much, maybe the war you fought never really ended, I want you to hear this. You're not finished yet. There's still people who need what you got to give. Still purpose waiting. Ruth proved that healing ain't about forgetting the ones we lost. It's about honoring them by living full, by standing up when it's easier to sit down, by opening your door when fear says lock it. That ranch became a sanctuary for wounded soldiers. Real place, real people. Tommy and Jerome started a non-profit that still helps veterans today. Miguel grew up to counsel traumatized kids, all because one stubborn woman decided to see where the mystery led. So what's your mystery? What's the thing you've been ignoring because it don't make sense? Maybe it's time to press on it. See what comes out. Might just change everything. If this story touched something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Fellow vet, widow who's forgotten she's strong, friend who's lost their way. And remember, you're tougher than you think, just like Ruth. Until next time, friends, keep fighting the good fight.